Hey everybody, welcome to Bill Whittle Live. It is Wednesday, first day of March 2017, and today we've got the kind of show where I'm going to probably just let this whole thing go for the whole time. I want to come back to an idea that I first talked about in an essay I wrote called Tribes back in 2005, and I want to kind of tie that into Donald Trump's speech. So today we have the epic story of Athens versus Sparta and how it applies to our American life today. So let's, without further ado, Neil, let's push the button and let's get this baby rolling. Athens versus Sparta. Tribes. What do I mean by all this? Well, it's been a while since I talked about these things, but I think it's probably time to come back to them again. Donald Trump's State of the Union speech last night I thought was extraordinary. I mean, I thought it was absolutely extraordinary. I don't know what else you could have wished for, frankly. So what does that have to do with Athens and Sparta and all the rest of this stuff? Well, here's what it has to do with it, I think. What we saw Donald Trump do in his State of the Union speech, basically, was to essentially just sort of outline values that were almost antithetical to Barack Obama's in almost every way, not just in terms of policy, but in terms of philosophy. We're going to put America first. We're going to make healthcare not something paid for by the government, but we're going to get the cost down, and we're going to do it so that it'll be less expensive and all the rest. So again, what does this have to do with this epic conflict between these two great Greek city-states, 2,500 years ago? Well, let's talk about Athens and Sparta for a minute, and then we'll see how we can apply this to our modern lives. Athens and Sparta, as we both know, two Greek city-states, the two most powerful city-states, at least in the 4th and 5th centuries BC. And I owe all of what I'm about to say to Victor Davis Hanson, who I've read just nonstop since I discovered the Western carnage and culture. I just finished reading his amazing book called A War Like No Other, which is about the Peloponnesian War, basically the gigantic 27-year civil war between Greeks, between the alliance of Athens and the alliance of Sparta. And basically this war tore Greek civilization to shreds, and each side had its own strengths and weaknesses. Nobody really had a strategy. But basically, Athens and Sparta were at war with each other for almost 3 decades. And what's interesting to me about this, now I'm going to just preface this by saying that we are dealing with generalizations here, and when you deal with generalizations, you make generalizations. And there's somebody going to come up and say all kinds of excuses or exceptions, but that's not the point. So let's just generalize a little bit. Athens was a maritime power. Athens was basically a trading power and became an empire based on its ability to trade. And Athens' influence stretched throughout the entire Aegean. And Athens got to that position by having a very open society. They were a genuine democracy. They weren't a republic like we are here. They were a genuine democracy. And that meant that there were 7,000 or 8,000 people coming from all sorts of different aspects of life, and I'm going to drop that background there. And basically what they're doing is they're voting on everything. 8,000 people. It looks like I'm bright. Neil, can you go into the colors and just drop the gamma down on those guys or something? We just have to keep resetting. By the way, the reason we keep resetting these cameras is because we have our NRA TV segment that I'm doing all week. I'm hosting for Collier Noir. So yeah, just slide that gamma down until it looks something approaching like a human being. And we just like to get all these things just stabilized and done, which we'll be doing in the not too distant future, I guess. Okay, so back to Athens and Sparta. So here's what happens. Athens is a maritime trading country, city-state rather, and it's an actual democracy. 7,000 people voting on everything. Athens' power is growing all throughout the 5th century BC. They've just come off a war against the Persians, allied with Sparta, which everybody knows from the Battle of Marathon and the 300s at Thermopylae and all the rest of it. And so they get into this civil war. And the reason they start the civil war is because Sparta is concerned that Athens is getting too strong. And Athens, as a point of fact, one of the things that Sparta was objecting to so much was that after the Persian Wars, Athens had actually been evacuated. The Persians came and they actually took Athens and they burned it nearly to the ground. And it was so traumatic for the Athenians that they decided to do something. And what they did was something I hadn't heard about until I read Dr. Hansen, and that's pretty much this. They decided that their port of Pineus, I want to say, is about 5-6 miles away from the city, and they built long walls. That's what they were called, the long walls. And these walls went around the city of Athens, but the walls also went the whole 5 or 6 miles to the harbor, and the harbor was surrounded by walls too. In those days, there was essentially no way to get over walls. If you had a good wall, you were pretty much safe. So Athens basically decided to wall off their city and to protect their access to their ports. And as long as they had their ports, the Athenian navy and the Athenian merchant fleet could bring in all the supplies they want to. Yay! Now the problem here is that the Spartans didn't like that at all. They thought the idea of a walled Athens was too much of a threat for them. And so what they decided to do was to finally just push the issue. Finally, they went to war. But I'm not talking so much about the two I'm not so much talking about the war, and I'm not even so much talking about the two city-states so much as I'm talking about the two attitudes. Now, back in 2005, I did an essay called Tribes, and it was back in the old eject days, and it was basically written very quickly in response to the charges that were being leveled against Bush and Republicans after Hurricane Katrina, and there were all sorts of horrible rapes, and apparently, although we didn't know what really actually happened, but there were stories of rapes and murder and so on in the Superdome, and so on and so on and so on. And I basically said, look, I think there's two tribes in this country, and my tribe doesn't do this. My tribe doesn't rape people, and my tribe knows how to ration food, and they know how to sterilize water, and they know how to take care of the sick, and all the rest of it. So that got me thinking about these two tribes, and in that essay back in 2005, I basically hadn't done a whole lot of research or reading on this, kind of just wrote it off the top of my head. But I talked about the pink tribe, and I talked about the gray tribe. I tried to find colors that weren't red and white or anything, but were colors that each one of the individual tribes would feel comfortable with. So the practical, rational people, the people you'd call conservatives, the people who are kind of committed to a realistic view of the world, regardless of whether it feels nice or not, and they tend to be kind of staid and not nearly so charming or sparkling as the pink tribe. But the gray tribe would be engineers, and I think I said gray is the color of their mechanical pencil on the blueprints of the bridge that they hope doesn't come down, and pink is the color of Angeline's Corvette as she drives through the streets of Hollywood looking fabulous. And what I was basically trying to get at is this. It was a lot more combative back then because I think the gray tribe had been really kind of grossly insulted. But what I realized I was onto is I was onto the same thing that I read so much about with Dr. Hansen's book, A War Like No Other. In other words, the Greek Civil War was not so much about North and South, although it was, and it wasn't so much about Ionic and Doric, although it was. It wasn't about those things really. What it really was about, at least in terms of what I find interesting about the Peloponnesian War, is that it was about two different schools of thought. It was about two different ways to run a society. Athens was based on Athena, the goddess of wisdom, and Sparta was based upon worshiping Ares, the god of war. Sparta was landlocked. Sparta didn't have these gigantic temples. Sparta wasn't known for its music. Sparta wasn't known for its plays. Sparta wasn't known for pretty much anything except for the Spartans. And the Spartans, by the time we get into the Peloponnesian War, had developed such a reputation as just essentially unbeatable soldiers that their entire strategy, Spartan strategy, fell apart because the Athenians would not fight them in the field. They just wouldn't. They would not do it. They knew what would happen if they ran up against these Spartan hoplites, which are basically citizen farmers. So as we all know, Sparta is a society that is essentially, from the age of 7, if you were born into a free citizen of Sparta, they had a lot of slaves doing their work. If you were born into Sparta, from the age of 7, you were raised for combat, and that's pretty much it. You didn't even have to go and work in the fields like the Athenians did. Athenians had people who were farmers, and fighting season would come up, and they'd put their armor on, and they'd march out there, and they'd do battle for a while, and then they'd come back home. But Spartans didn't have to do that. They trained full-time to be warriors, and they got to be very, 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 very good at it, especially in the 5th century when they were fighting the Persians, and as I say, Thermopylae and the 300 and all the rest, kind of legendary kind of thing. So we have one society that has essentially, again, generalizing, essentially no arts really, no sciences, no poetry, not known for their music, not known for their architecture. Sparta's just kind of a collection of little huts out in the middle of the hills, landlocked in the southern part of Greece in the Peloponnesian peninsula. Now, on the other hand, you've got Athens, and Athens is glorious state. I mean, they've got the Parthenon today is still probably the most amazing building I think ever constructed. It's this gigantic temple up on the Acropolis, which is a giant rock outgrowth in Athens. So the Acropolis means the high city, and it looks down on everything. So Athens, because it's a democracy, Athens is welcoming in people from all over the world, and you could become a citizen of Athens rather easily. You could become a free person in Athens. Man, I still look awful hot there, pal. Can we just take the gamma down on that camera? Just mark it. Just slide the gamma down, because I am burning up, and maybe the contrast down a little bit too, please. Yeah, I hate to have a great, awesome, amazing thing like this. There you go. Yeah, somewhere there. Okay, so here we go. So Athens, on the other hand, has a tremendous international culture, and they're basically open borders. You know, anybody pretty much could be an Athenian if you were ready to work and trade and so on. And Athens, as I said earlier, was not only not an oligarchy like they were back in Sparta, just a few small families and rulers and kings in Sparta. In Athens, they had an actual democracy. It's 7,000 people basically sitting there and doing all kinds of things and voting on things. So anyway, here we go. What is it about that has to do with Donald Trump's speech in 2017? Well, I think that for the last 8 years, certainly, and probably for a little while before that, the American character, which has always been a really amazing and remarkable balance of Athenian and Spartan qualities, got out of balance. It just lost its way. It became too Athenian. I don't know if we've ever been too Spartan. Without question, Nazi Germany was too Spartan, but I don't know if America has ever been too Spartan. But we have, and certainly are now, just coming into the beginning of the Trump presidency, I think we're way too Athenian for our own good. We're way too Athenian. And we were over the last 8 years, we were made, as Athens was, very open, very tumultuous. We had all the actors and all of the scientists and all the poets and all the rest on the side of Athens, and those savages down in Sparta, those mean killing machine bastards down there, were just looked down on and kind of sneered at. Well, Sparta decided they didn't like being sneered at so much, so Sparta decided that they were going to say to Athens, essentially, look, if you keep building this empire of yours, if you keep expanding this empire, and if you especially start building walls around not only your city but your port so we can just march around the countryside, have no effect on you, then we're going to have a problem. And that's exactly what Athens did. They went on with the building, and then Sparta invaded Athens, and it was on. Now, this is the issue, I think. The issue is a question of balance. It's a question of finding the balance. I don't know why that's driving me nuts so much. Neil, can you just take the contrast down on the close up and it's what?
It's just very, very bright. I can't get rid of it.
Take the gamma and the brightness down both if you can. Sorry about that, folks. I hate that, but it's just driving me crazy here. We opened up the shutters quite a bit on these cameras for the NRA shows, and now we're burning ourselves out. In any event, we've got these two cultures. We've got these two attitudes about how to run a society. And America has always been brilliant because America was both. America was Sparta and it was Athens. America, certainly since the end of World War II, America has been a country that not only was capable of becoming a world trade and leader and having economic contacts and basically running all around the world and doing all these other things. It was also Sparta. America could fight. America was they were the best warriors in the world and still remain the best warriors in the world. And so this balance between our Spartan side and our Athenian side is the essence of what makes America strong and great. It's in balance. In other words, in a perfect society, and as perfect as America ever got anyway, you would have a balance of Athenian and Spartan. And what that means is basically this. You would have, in fact, medicine and science and actors and poetry. You'd have arts. You'd have all of the theatrical things. You'd have all of the soft stuff that Athens had. But at the same time, you would have all of the tough stuff, all of the hard stuff that the Spartans provided. You would have actors who and culture, and our pop culture goes around the world. American movies are the language of the entire world. They talk about American movies in Russia. You look at any group of teenagers anywhere in the world today, and you will see them wearing T-shirts in English with American brands and logos on them, or they'll be wearing Patriots football jerseys or whatever. So our culture, our trading culture, and our cultural exports in terms of all of these things were spread all over the world, exactly as they were in Athens. But over the last 8 years, we have become all Athens. We've become all trade, all talk. We've become all soft, all music, all poetry, all this other stuff. And the Spartan qualities that kept people in awe of this American experiment fell apart. They were not only neglected, they were abandoned. They were intentionally abandoned and destroyed. And these Spartan values most obviously show themselves in a strong military and a strong police force. And when I say a strong police force, I don't mean a state. I mean policemen who do their job well and who maintain law and order on the streets of your country, or your city-state for that matter. So here comes Donald Trump, and he's doing his State of the Union address. And what's he saying, basically? He's saying we need to stop trading with people who are taking advantage of us. He used the Harley-Davidson example of Harley-Davidson is, there's some countries were putting 100% tax on Harley-Davidson motorcycles. And they, as Donald Trump said, they weren't even looking for a break anymore. They just given up on it. So we were Athenian to the point of being pushed around. We were all of the Spartan elements of our society, all of the toughness was just being bleached away by Barack Obama and by the progressives who love the Athenian life. And that's frankly why for the last several years, if not 20 years, we've been hearing actors telling us how to think and what to do, because actors in an Athenian society, especially one that's more or less at peace behind our secure walls, and we've got our walls, our long walls are called the Pacific and the Atlantic. But when you have a long period of peace as we have, you begin to get into the Athenian arrogance of thinking that there are no bad guys out there and that nothing can go wrong. And that is a problem. So when Donald Trump is up there basically saying what he's saying in his State of the Union address, he's saying we're going to put America first. We're going to secure our southern border. We're going to increase the power of our military and get it back where it's going to be. We don't want any fights with anybody, but we're not going to get pushed around. China wants to build islands in the middle of the ocean. Well, then we're going to have a little discussion about that. And what Donald Trump is doing is he's bringing Spartan qualities back to America. He's bringing some Spartan back into the mix. And this balance is what has always made us so amazing. It's what made this country so unique, so exceptional. The balance between being military badasses with a big stick, as well as being the people that provide the poetry, and which in this case today would be movies and the culture and all the rest of it. So that's why I think so many progressives hear Donald Trump and they are just absolutely mortified, because they hear this warlike talk and they hear this kind of confrontational talk, and they don't get it. They don't know what it is, and they fear it. They fear it quite strongly. They're one of the things you hear constantly from the left is Donald Trump has his finger on the nuclear trigger, and my God, if we don't do something to stop him and make another movie or something, then a little YouTube video telling the American people to basically recall Trump and have another election. If we don't do that, then Donald Trump, this lunatic's got his hand on the button, and he's going to get us all killed. And that is a pretty clear, in fact, as clear an example as you might ever need of people that do not understand how things work in the world outside of the walled city. They don't understand it at all. They're as arrogant as the Athenians were. They do not understand what the Spartans did understand, and that is it is a nasty place out there, and if you want to keep your farms and your families intact, you better be prepared to fight for them. And most importantly, and this is what the Spartans absolutely understood to their bones, they understood that if you have a reputation for that kind of ability to fight, if you have that kind of reputation, and people have that much respect and awe and even fear of what you're capable of doing in war, then you don't have to fight. You don't have to fight. The fighting only happens when people look at this beautiful Athenian empire and they see the Parthenon up there and that's a nice looking temple. I think I'd like one of those. Matter of fact, that's more work than I want to do. I think I'll take that one. And I think we'll move in and we'll conquer them and we'll do all this other stuff. So Greece was in balance. Greece was in balance when they were fighting the Persians because you had Athenian democracy, you had Athenian invention, Athenian ideas, Athenian philosophy, people who were free farmers fighting for their own lands. You had that incredible power of the freedom, but you also had these hoplite warriors from Sparta who had been training their entire lives for those moments on the battlefield where 300 of them are going to stand up against an army of 100,000. That's what makes a healthy society, especially a healthy society that's got plans on being, big in the world and not being Switzerland. I've got nothing against Switzerland, and Switzerland is fine. And by the way, everybody in Switzerland has to have their own machine gun in their house, so there's some Spartan aspects to a place like Switzerland as well. But this is what I think we're seeing, and I think this is what we're hearing, and why progressives are reacting so badly to this. They're hearing Sparta, and they don't know what to do. Now, those of us who live on the other side of this divide, on the other side of those Athenian walls, where we look inside, we see nothing but decadence and corruption and lunacy and actors and playwrights and poets basically dictating foreign policy. We look at this and we say, we've been listening to this for the last 10 years now, 20, 30, 40 years, really, when you get right down to it. That American patriotic core, that Jacksonian core of the country that understands that this country is unique and what happens inside the walls of this country are not the same thing as what happens on the outside. Those Jacksonian Americans, those Spartans, have been for the last 30 or 40 years hearing more and more and more and more and more and more and more of this Athenian propaganda. And we've watched our deterrence erode, we've watched our skills erode, we've watched our intelligence erode, we've watched our discipline erode, we've watched all of the things that we as Spartans understand are necessary to keep a society free and strong. We've watched all of these things get washed away by this Athenian sophistry for the last 25 or 30 or 40 years or something. And now what's happening is, against all odds, American Spartans elected a Spartan president right when the Athenians were sure that there was never, ever, 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 ever going to be another chance for Sparta to basically hold the reins of power, and they governed accordingly. It became so incredibly corrupt. Now, you may think that what I'm basically calling for here is for Spartan values to take over America and get to this world where everything's all about the military and everything's harsh and everything's training and everything's fighting and everything's tough. On the contrary, that is exactly precisely what I am not in favor of doing. What I'm in favor of doing is going back to a sense of balance. I want to go back to a sense of balance between these things. I want all of the artistic achievements of America. I want all of the things like the movies. I want the science. I want the education. I want the poetry. I want the art. I want all of these things. But at the same time, I want the strength and the deterrence and the basic moral, ethical core of the Spartan warrior ethic to maintain the perimeter of this society. And I think basically when it comes down to it, I think if I were to find a solution for this, and this, look, I'm not talking about coercion here. I'm just talking about an ideal society. And I know ideal societies do not exist. I understand that. They don't exist. And they never will exist. But if it were up to me, in terms of just making a case for something, just basically appealing to the American people, what I would basically do is say, listen, Meryl Streep and Sean Penn and all the rest of you people who are incredibly talented, insanely talented people who are the best in the world and who make amazing movies that move us all and make us think and cry and all of that. You guys do what you're good at. Do what you're good at, which is perform these Athenian-type events, these Athenian-type skills. Do what you're good at, which is find a way to entertain, find a way to develop new sciences, find a way to develop new art forms, find a way to do all of that. And for God's sakes, stop telling the Spartans how to defend the country. Would you please just stop that? Would you please just stop that? Because my understanding is I have no memory of seeing an enormous event on television, enormous, watched by 40, 50 million people. I have no recollection of an event where it's nothing but a group of U.S. generals, colonels, majors, and so on from all four of the divisions of 5, including the Coast Guard. I have no event of an event that happens once a year where all of the military brass in America gets together on a gigantic stage and in front of 40 or 50 million people, they start telling artists and actors how to perform in their movies. I've never seen that happen. I've never seen it happen. I've never, ever seen that happen. I've never seen the Spartans tell the Athenians how to do what the Athenians are good at. I have seen endlessly and unrelentingly, I have seen the Athenians try to tell the Spartans what to do, and that's why we're in the trouble we're in today. It's pretty simple, really. It's pretty simple. We don't have to have either an Athenian society or a Spartan society. The genius of America as a nation is we as a nation were able to do what the Greeks as a people were never able to do. We're able to put the two things together. We can put the two things together. We can have an open society and we can have a tough military, and we can have strong borders, and we can have a strong presence overseas, and that provides the security that allows the Athenian traits to flourish. If you don't have that Spartan, if you don't have the Spartans on the wall, then what happens inside the city is just a matter of time. It's not only going to be taken over, it's not only going to be conquered, it's going to decay from the inside, because they are going to think down there in the floor of Athens and up in the Parthenon, the Athenian attitude, all of the philosophers and all of the the sophists and all of the playwrights and all of the rest of them are going to think that the world inside the city is the same as the world outside the city. But the Spartans who are on the wall looking outside know that's not true. They know it's not true. They know what's out there. They train their whole lives to be prepared for what's out there. Let them do their jobs. I don't mean just let the military do their jobs. Let the people who are responsible for defending this country defend the country. Don't tell them how to do it. Don't lecture them on being racist or misogynist or homophobes or anything, because they're not. They're not any of these things. They understand things, you Athenian liberals out there in Hollywood. They understand things. People like Donald Trump and the rest of us in flyover country, even though I'm on the coast, all of the American conservatives or Republicans, whatever you want to call them, the heartland of America understands the things that you do not understand, Meryl Streep. You will not understand it. And I'll go further than that. If you did understand it, Meryl, if you did, you wouldn't be any good as an actor. You see, you can't do them both. You can't do them both. Likewise, I'd be willing to bet you that James Barkin, Mad Dog Mattis, if you put him in the lead of... I don't know. Let's say you put him in the lead of To Kill a Mockingbird. I'd be willing to bet you that Mattis is not a terribly good actor. As a matter of fact, I'd be willing to bet you that Mattis on camera would turn in perhaps the worst performance of Atticus Finch in the history of the play. Because that's not what he's supposed to do. That's not his job. His job is to go out there and kill bad guys. And when you start saying things like, we shouldn't be killing bad guys, you don't know what you're talking about. Okay? It's exactly like Matt is saying, I don't like the lighting on this. I think maybe, this mood lighting where these little pools of light, no, I think everything should be brilliantly illuminated so we can see all of the movie at all the time. You, Meryl Streep, speaking for the rest of the progressive community, would hear somebody say something like this. What the hell does he know about lighting? What does he know about stagecraft? What does he know about music? What does he know about subtlety? What does he know about storytelling, rhetoric, beats, all of this? What does he know? He knows nothing about it. But the difference between Mathis and you, Meryl, is that Mathis knows that he doesn't know. And you don't know that you don't know. That's the fundamental difference. And that's why people like me, who through some miracle have been able to grow up in both of these worlds, who've been able to start as a fighter pilot and then become a theater person and a director, a person like me, and I'm not the only one, but it's a little unusual, I'm able to synthesize these two things into a message that makes sense for the whole country. And this is the closing thing, because we're only doing one topic today and we're going to push it all out to Facebook. And then we'll put it up on YouTube for this one. This is the point. Somebody just parenthetically said, what about Reagan? Reagan, perfect. Reagan was a strong man who understood the power of defense, but Reagan was an actor. He knew how to communicate. But back to the model. If we could make a deal with you, if the Athenians and the Spartans could make a deal internally in America, think about what a world that would be if the Athenians would simply stick to what the Athenians are good at and let the Spartans stick to what the Spartans are good at. Then we would have a very, very good city, because the people on the wall with the red cloaks and the lambdas on their shield, the people who've trained their entire lives, who understand in their bones that what's going on down there in the walls of Athens is beautiful and marvelous and unique and delicate. The people who think like that, the people who put on that shield and that helmet and that spear, do not need you in your little white tunic telling them how to fight the animals and the barbarians that are out there all the time. Let them alone. Leave them to do their jobs. And if you want to continue with poetry and music and art and all the things that I love and you love and we all love, the Spartans love, if you want to keep doing that, Meryl, if you want Hollywood to continue on, and if you want all of your friends to be able to have your cocktail parties, you had better let them do their job. Because if you don't, and you win, and Athenian values triumph completely in America, you're not going to have all of us of America as Athens. What you're going to have is all of America on fire, in ruins, under the sword, dying by the thousands, because it takes the Spartans on the wall to allow the Athenians to flourish in the things that they do. Hopefully that's not too complicated for you. It seems to me pretty straightforward. And by the way, in closing, for the whole day, for the whole show, again, I want to come back to this one point, because I think it's a very important point. The Spartans are not telling you what to do, Meryl. You're lecturing the entire country on adopting your philosophy and your political positions, which are barking mad insane. They don't have anything to do with the world whatsoever. You're telling them what to do. They're not telling you what to do. And if they did tell you what to do, you would be quite upset about it, and you would be right. And you would say, what does he know about this? And you'd be right. In the same way that you don't know anything about foreign policy, you don't know anything about the kind of people we're dealing with. You haven't seen people's heads sawed off. You haven't seen these warriors hiding behind men and women and children. You haven't seen them torturing children. You haven't seen the mass graves. You haven't seen any of this. You haven't seen people beaten to death with cinder blocks. You haven't seen people set on fire in Africa. You haven't seen any of these things. And if you had, you wouldn't be able to do the job that you do so well. I don't think you're overrated. I do think you're a has-been, but let's just call a truce here, why don't we? So there it is. It's not just Athens, and it's not just Sparta. The tragedy of the Greeks was that they could not put the two together. They could not do it. It was Athens and Sparta at war with each other all the time, and it ruined the genius of ancient Greece. That's what we're doing here. We have our Athenians and our Spartans at war with each other, and it's got to stop. And it's okay to stop. The Spartans don't have to stop being Spartans, and the Athenians don't have to stop being Athenians. You both get to do what you want to do. You just have to stop telling each other what to do, you see? If you do that, then we're in business. We got the tough guys on the wall. They're watching the show. They think it's an awesome show. They're very impressed, and they're ready to fight and defend your ability to do a play, Meryl, with their lives. It's the only life they've got, and their lives are just as important as yours is. It may not be as glamorous, it may not be as visible, it may not even be as interesting, but it's as important to them and their relatives as your life is to you. They're up there willing to sacrifice their lives so that you can do your plays in peace. Do you see how this works? Do you see how this works? Do you see why I value those people much, much higher than I value you ethically? I mean, we're all people, we're all human beings. I don't want to see any of you die. I don't want anybody to die. But they are ready to give their life for you. And you're not only not ready to give your life for them, you're not even going to give them the respect that they deserve for putting their physical bodies between spears and you. You're not even going to give them, and the people that elected this president and the people who supply those warriors, those Spartans, you're not going to even give them the respect of understanding that they're not worse people than you, and they're not stupider people than you either. They see and understand things that you will never, ever grasp, Meryl Streep. Not ever, not no matter how long you study it, it will never get through. So, if these people are going to risk their lives and and give their lives to defend you and your Athenian values, then the least you can do is you can basically mind your own business when it comes to Spartan issues about who to attack, what to defend, where to be and where not to be. You can leave them alone and you can give them the respect. You don't have to support them. If you had a soul, you would, but you don't have to. But you don't get the right to criticize people who are ready to die for your ability to call them a bunch of savages, homophobes, racists, and all the rest of it. Just racists and all the rest of it. You should be ashamed of yourself. Ashamed of yourself. I've never heard any of these military or soldiers ever say Meryl Streep needs to use a little less makeup or any of that stuff. And furthermore, I'll tell you one final thing. I keep saying the final thing. When you hear me say I've said it's the final thing 7 times, the show's over. They don't complain to you, Meryl. What they do is they go out there and they fight overseas to keep those forces away from you. And they always win. They've never lost. They didn't lose in Vietnam. They've never lost. They're Spartans. American Spartans are, you can't beat them because they're free people. You can't beat them. They've never lost, ever, out there in the field. They have had their victories given away by people like you. And instead of them criticizing you the way they should, they don't do that. You know what they do? They get together with their friends and they have a beer, and the toughest ones of them basically just shrug it off and they say, hey, that's the deal. That's the deal. We're less than 1% of the population in terms of active duty combat troops or something, and our job is to protect the flock. And if the flock doesn't like us, that's not our problem. It's not our job to decide who we protect and who we don't protect. Our job is to protect the flock, to protect the American people. But when people like you disrespect them, and I know you say I didn't disrespect the troops, but you did. When you basically say that the people who voted for Donald Trump are just a bunch of racists and hicks and hillbillies, you are disrespecting the people who are putting their lives between you and the spears of some very bad people. And so what they do is they either hang out with their buddies or they become a little more quiet. And what they're doing it to the number of about 20 a day, Meryl, is they're killing themselves. And the reason they're killing themselves is not so hard really to understand. I would think somebody like you with your emotional depth should be able to understand this. The reason they're killing themselves in such large numbers is not because war broke them. It's not because they went out there and war broke them. War changed them, but war didn't break them. War didn't break them. War showed them what was important. War, for the ones who came home, showed them how important this country is and why it was worth defending. And the reason they're killing themselves is because people like you and your absolute idol Hillary Clinton have not the slightest respect for these people, because Hillary Clinton opens the door to the city every night. She puts all national security secrets out there. All of the things that matter to the Spartans, she simply utterly disregards, and she just leaves them out there to die. And they're killing themselves because they won in Vietnam, and then the Democrats gave the victory away. You may not like to hear that, and I know that's not what you've been told by Oliver Stone and other big thinking geniuses, but the fact of the matter is the Vietnam War was started by the communist North Vietnamese charging into South Vietnam. And there was a border between North and South Vietnam. And that war was fought forever, 11 years of American involvement. And when the war was over, Meryl, the communists were back above the line. They didn't win. They lost. They lost because their purpose was to take over the South, and they didn't do it. 2 years after the Vietnam War was over and Americans were on their way, and after Watergate, people like you, Athenians like you, went in there and voted to take away the means that South Vietnam had to defend itself, and then the communists took over and murdered 7 or 8 million people and so on. And you know what the big irony here is, Meryl? People like you and Oliver Stone and all the rest who are 100% sure that Vietnam was a catastrophic mistake, the same way you're sure that Iraq and Afghanistan are catastrophic mistakes. Here's what I find particularly ironic and disgusting about you and your opinion. You were, and people like you and Jane Fonda and all the rest of you anti-war people in Vietnam were saying it's a catastrophe. For God's sakes, leave these people alone. Let them have their communism because we like communism and so on. And the greatest irony of all of this is Vietnam now is, for the first time in its history, happy because Vietnam has embraced capitalism more than you have. Vietnamese people are selling things and they're getting richer, and they have their own lives and their own cars and they have their own businesses and they're happy. And they work hard and they make products that people need. They're not very complex products right now, but they're important products, and I bought a few of them. I look inside the back of a shirt or something and it says manufactured in Vietnam, and I say to myself, Why did you Athenians take away their ability to be free 40 years ago? Why? And why did you take away all of the blood and sacrifice that those Spartans had made in order to keep those people free? They are capitalists. Meryl, there's no more North and South. All of Vietnam. Ho Chi Minh, he won. You let him win. You gave him the freedom to win after the war. And after it was over, all of these communists murdered everybody, and all of the people who thought that the socialists were right realized that they weren't right. They're just mass murdering control freaks. And they became Americans. They became capitalists. And the same is true in Iraq and Afghanistan, especially Iraq. 5 months of George Bush's tenure being over, not a single American fatality in Iraq. I talked to a lieutenant colonel the other day who I made a video for his retirement party because his sister asked me to, and I spent some time on it. And I did that because he's prepaid for that video. He was out there defending me and my family and everything I love while I was sitting here in America banging away bravely on a keyboard. But he saw the same thing. He saw the victory. He saw the stability. He saw that there was a chance for these people to be able to govern their own lives. And it's not easy, and they have a lot of cultural baggage, but so did the Nazis, and we've had troops there for, 70 years now, something like that. So they went over there and they fought and they died, not just for our freedom or your freedom, but for their freedom too. You may not believe it. I know you think it's a little corny, but Spartans are a little simpler than Athenians sometimes. They went over there and did it. And the proof that they know, the proof that they went over there for freedom is because you can make the case that somebody might be, as you think, most of the friends of you have in Hollywood think, that people who join the army or the military are the stupid ones and the ones who can't possibly get a job, and all of the uninteresting, square-headed kind of blockheads, not nearly as interesting as charming as your 4-year-olds or 5-year-olds who are lying on the floor of Walmart or Spagos, for that matter, kicking and screaming in the air because they didn't get what they wanted. But these people went over there, and they and you could make the case that if this was all about the Halliburton death machine, then they went over there and they found out what was going on, and then they come back. And then if they came back, Meryl, they would have gotten out of the military. But that's not what they did. They came back to America, and they re-enlisted, and they re-enlisted, and they re-enlisted. I know people who went to Iraq who probably may have had to go 1 time. I know people went 5 times. Why did they do that? Why? They did it because they understood what was at risk there. They did it because they're Spartans. They did it because they understand the dark side of human nature in a way that you will never understand. You and your friends can pretend to understand it, but you might do a great scene with special effects, but I'm quite sure that Matt Damon is not willing to saw somebody's heads off with a rusty fishing knife. So these Spartans see this all the time. It's not play acting for them. It's not special effects. They don't call in an extra, a stunt man when the difficult stuff comes in. That's pretty much it. So there you go. We have a president now who's returning us some Spartan values to this overly Athenian, remarkable democracy of ours. And if those of you out there who feel like it means the Spartans have taken over and we just can't wait to go to war, you're wrong, and you don't know what you're talking about. The Spartans are back to the degree that they will be in balance with the Athenians. And when the rest of the world understands that they're no longer just these soft, stupid, useful idiot actors and philosophers at work, when there are actual Spartans now sharpening their spears and polishing their spears and polishing their shields, when the rest of the world understands that the Spartans are back, then we will not be in a more dangerous place. We will be in a far, far, far safer one. That'll do it for Bill Whittle Live today on the 1st of March of 2017. I thought Donald Trump's speech was absolutely remarkable. And despite the fact we had a couple of little technical problems with having adjusted the camera apertures, I think this is a particularly good show. So if you have a chance, here's what you could do for me, and I don't mean to be as presumptuous as this. I certainly don't, but I've heard it from enough people to think there might be some basis for it. If you want to help me, and if you want to help the Spartans, I'm not asking you for money. I'm asking you to share this video, and if you're not liking the BillWhittle.com Facebook page, go and like it and share it. Get it out there, spread it around. People need to hear this. It makes sense. History is our guide. History is the laboratory of human experience, and people who study history do not have to repeat the same errors that were made 100 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, or 2,500 years ago. We get to look at what happened. We get to say, that's a stupid idea. Let's not do that. All right, we will see you tomorrow on Thursday, the 2nd of March, 2017. I'm hosting CN Live on NRA TV in about an hour. That'll be at, 5 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock Pacific. For NRA TV. That's always been a lot of fun. Until then, thank you very much. If you want to become a member, we could use your help. These messages are important. They need to get out there. And we will see you tomorrow. So it's time to push the button, Neil.